Hello, it's Captain. Welcome back to Stormworks Basics. This will be the second episode in the beginner boat hull tutorial series. And so we're going to look at in this, and we're going to start to talk about stability. Last episode, we built the basics of the hull. You can go in the workshop and grab that hull. I just do ask that if you use any of the things I post in the workshop and you do post your version to the workshop, that you do credit me for the design of the hull in this case. So let's go ahead and we're going to talk about stability. And I'm going to talk about the basic stability of a boat, and that's how we need to build it. Inherently in our hull, we'll have inherent stability. That means that it's going to be stable on its own. That way you don't need such really complex stability systems, or as complex stability systems. The boat is going to be very stable on its own. So let's go ahead and we'll talk about that. All right, so we've moved bases, and now if you look, we were over there at North Meyer Outpost, and now we're over here. And so we're actually going to start on a terrestrial base, and we're going to start talking about stability of this boat, but we're going to talk about it on land. All right, so first thing we're going to talk about is our center of gravity. Center of gravity in game is depicted by this pink square. Right, that is where the mass is. So the mass is about centrally located. It is also about centrally located vertically. All right, and so if we count that off here, let's go ahead and do a quick count. The boat is 39 blocks long. If we count out 20 is halfway. As you notice, it's leaning a little bit. It has the center of gravity a little bit towards the aft, towards the stern, right there. And you can see where it is vertically. Now, last episode, we talked about this is where our deck is that we stand on. We want our water line to be at least 1 block below the deck, or else it's going to look like water is washing over our deck. We don't want that. We want it so that that water effect is not on our deck, or it looks like our boat is sinking, right? So we want to make sure that's 1 block below. Now we want our center of gravity to be below the water line. If our center of gravity is above the water line, we consider the water line about where our center of rotation is. And that's where the boat's going to want to rotate about. And if the center of gravity is above the water line, the boat is going to want to be upside down. If the center of gravity is below the water line, our boat is going to want to sit right side up. The higher it is above the center of gravity, the more our boat's going to want to be upside down and less stable. The lower the center of gravity is below the water line, the more stable the boat's going to want to be. It's going to want to be right side up, and it's going to oscillate less when we, say, walk from one side to the other, or a wave pushes us. The boat is going to stop rolling more quickly. It's going to want to stay upside down. Let's say you get hit by a wave and the boat flips upside down. If your center of gravity is low enough, it's going to make the boat automatically flip right side up. And that's all stability stuff that we want. So the first thing we're going to do here, let's go ahead and we're going to mark this with a pink square on the build. That's going to show us right where our center of gravity is. We're going to play with our center of gravity, and we're going to use pivots to demonstrate stability with the boat here. So let's go ahead and save this real quick, and we're going to start by adding some pivots. So let's go to pivots, and we're going to grab compact velocity pivots. And I'm going to put the right here on the deck. And I'm going to add 2 pivots. I'm going to add one to the front and one to the rear. Now, you may not know this about pivots, but if you click on them and you drag your power to 0, they act like bearings, and they will actually turn freely. So if you ever need to turn something freely in game, you can do that with these pivots. All right, next thing we're going to do is we want to make sure this is high enough so that it can rotate 360 degrees if we need it to. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to push these blocks all the way down to the ground. All right, push them all the way down like so. And we'll go ahead and we'll connect these. We'll go to the merge tool and we'll merge them. So now we have a base platform and we have a couple of bearing pivots. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make a nice square platform base. This is going to make it really nice and stable. Now, as you notice, when I built that, it moved the center of gravity. That's why we marked it with this paint here. Is as we change the center of gravity, we're going to have to see what it'll look like. So as you can see, we now have a base platform, we have some pivots, and we're going to check out the stability of our boat. So let's go and spawn it. Remember, that's where our center of gravity of the actual boat is, right there at that pink block. It is below the water line. Now that's going to mean this boat will prefer to stay upright. All right. But it is just below the water line. That means it's not that stable. So I'm standing in the middle, right? You see it oscillating. It's still oscillating. I'm going to go to the side. I'm going to go back to the side. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make the oscillation worse As it starts to straighten up, I'm going to make it worse. I'm going to add to the oscillation. And as you can see, you can imagine how miserable this would be. A wave hits you, or you're trying to run back and forth and doing fishing. Imagine you and a friend are on your boat, and you can see this boat wants to tip over. All right. But because the center of gravity is below the water line, it's not going to tip over. All right. It would take more force, more weight than we have on our character to tip this boat over. Now notice how long it takes for this to stop oscillating. I fell off it a little while ago. It's still going. All right, so we can do some fundamental things here to make this better. And we're going to go in here and we're going to start screwing around with the center of gravity. All we're going to try to do is we're going to keep the center of gravity. We want it to be balanced forward and back, and we also want it to be balanced so that the lower it gets, the more stability. So right there on this pink block is where our, right there on that pink block is where the center of gravity is. So let's go ahead and let's lower the center of gravity. So we're going to go ahead in here, and right there I'm going to cut two in front, cut two in behind it, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to fill that with weight blocks. So let's look at it before we do that, and it is at 1424 is its mass. Let's go forward and let's replace all that with weight blocks. All right, so let's grab those. Now, a weight block, if you don't know this, is 10 times the mass of a regular block. Regular block weighs 1. Weight block weighs 10. All right, so we're able to add a lot of mass this way. So let's go ahead and put that in. So before, it was 1424. After we put the weight blocks in, it is now 1829. So a little over 400 mass. Now let's look at where the center of gravity is. If you look at the center of gravity, it's about 1 block lower. So this was the first center of gravity. Now it's 1 block lower. Now let's go ahead and make it even lower. All right, let's cut some more weight blocks in here. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut out 2 rows here, cut out 2 rows here. Let's look at the mass again before. It was at 1829. And let's put some more weight blocks in here. Now it is at 2082. So we've added even more mass to this, 2-something hundred mass. All right, let's cut some more in there. We won't do too many tests here, so we'll just cut even more in right now. So we're going to put some more mass in there. We're now up to 2333. So before we started this whole thing, it was about 1400 mass. Let's put some more mass in here. And what we'll try to do here quickly is we'll try to get this out to be about 1,000 mass more than it was. All right, good. So let's look at it. All right, so it was 14 something on our when we didn't add any mass. Now we're up to 2441. All right, let's go ahead and let's look where the center of gravity is. All right, that's where the center of gravity was before. Now we're way down here. All right, now let's talk about, again, the fundamental thing. The lower the center of gravity is below the water line, below the center of rotation, the more stable your boat is going to be. So we're making our boat more and more and more stable. So we'll bring in a subgrid, and that's going to be our pivot. And all we have to do here is, let's go bring the whole thing up. And we'll go ahead and we will paste that. And we'll merge it up. And as you can see, we now have our pivot test back. And this is where it was. Remember, before it was up here the last test we did. The pink block, the center of gravity, was barely below the water line. Now it is 2 blocks below the water line. It was 1 block below. It's now 3 blocks total below the water line. Let's spawn it up. And we'll make a prediction. Because we've dropped the weight lower and lower, the boat is going to want to prefer to stay upright because it wants to put that weight back down to the center of the earth, right? So it wants to stay upright. If you remember before, I was able to get this boat rocking and rolling so bad that I fell out of it, and it took a very long time. I didn't even wait long enough for it to stop rocking because it was so unstable. Now let's try it. I go all the way to the left. I go all the way to the right. I go all the way to the left. You can already tell it is much more stable, and it's going to be harder for me to get this boat to tip over. All right, we're trying. We're going back and forth. You already noticed this boat is much, much, much harder to rock and roll and tip over. All right, see how it's much harder? Now before, remember, I got it rock and rolling enough that I fell out. It's going to be very hard, if impossible, for me to fall out of this boat now. All right, I can't even do it. There's going to be no way for me with my character's weight to be able to rock this boat hard enough so that I fall out. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out, and I'm going to see how long it takes for this boat to stop oscillating. All right, so that's a big part of stability is we want this boat to stop oscillating more quickly. Again, because the weight prefers to be hanging down. Bingo, stopped. All right, so let's go back in. And what I'll do here is I will go ahead and we will grab the save. So here's this pivot test save. All right, we've got our center of gravity down right about there, right? Right there. Let's get it even lower. All right, let's go ahead and we'll cut some more weight blocks in here. So let's go cut some in there in the back. We'll cut some more in here. Let's just quickly see what it weighed. It was 2441, so about 1,000 from the first example. And let's see what this will weigh now. All right, now it weighs 2707. So this weighs almost double what it weighed in the first example. Let's actually cut some more weight blocks in here and see if we can get it up to double what it initially weighed before we put any weight blocks in. All right, now it weighs double what it weighed before we put any weight blocks in. And let's mark the new center of gravity, right? We added weight to it. Let's look at the center of gravity. So if you look here, the center of gravity it's not quite all the way down this next block, but it is almost a block lower. So where before it was there, it is now right here. That's where our center of gravity is, right about there. We'll actually just do this to show where our center of gravity is, right? It is lower. Before it was here, now it's there. We've lowered it even more. So let's go ahead and grab that pivot again. Let's go ahead and paste it. We'll merge it. And we'll go ahead and we'll test the stability. Now, again, we'll make a prediction. We've lowered the center of gravity by almost another block. That's going to increase stability even more. All right. Let's get in the center here, and let's see how hard it is to get this thing rocking and rolling. All right. As you see, it's even more stable than before. I'm going to try. We knew before we couldn't get this thing to tip over just with my character weight last time, so this is going to be even harder. So I'm just going to jump out, and it will stop rotating even more quickly. It will stop oscillating more quickly, and it'll go back to being stable and in place. So this is increasing the stability by lowering that center of gravity. All right, so I've just loaded back up the original one, right? This one's 1424. If we look at where the center of gravity is only about one block below the waterline. Let's put a bunch of weight up high. You see a lot of people who struggle with this, who are on Reddit, who say, oh, my boat keeps tipping over. Why is it doing this? It's generally, the answer is your center of gravity is too high. And so let's build a really high center of gravity, right? We put on a bridge, we put on a closed cabin, whatever it might be that you've chosen to design into your build, your center of gravity is now way, way, way too high. And if you put your center of gravity too high, remember what I said, if your center of gravity is above your center of rotation, your boat is actually going to prefer to be upside down. And you don't want that, right? You want your boat to stay right side up. You want it to be able to take some waves. You want it to be able to stop oscillating. So right there, we've got about a center of gravity that's 3 blocks higher than the center of rotation. And we've got ours down to about 3 blocks below. So this is actually going to prefer to be upside down, right? So let's go ahead and add the pivot in. All right, let's paste that and let's merge it. All right, now this boat, we make a quick prediction, right? The center of gravity is very, very high. It's 3 blocks above the center of rotation. The boat is going to want to be upside down. It prefers to be upside down because the mass is above the center of rotation. So all you need to do is add a little bit of movement, and this boat is going to want to tip over. It's inherently unstable. And so we can test it really quick. I can run back and forth, and bingo, it didn't take much force there, and look what it's doing. It wants to be upside down. So when you see posts on Reddit or elsewhere where people are like, hey, my boat keeps tipping over, a wave hit it, it's upside down, my boat is tilting, right? Sometimes you see a person, you're like, why is my boat always tilting? The reason their boat's always tilting is the center of gravity is so close to the center of rotation. We'll actually do that test next. We'll do a center of gravity at the center of rotation. You'll see how the boat doesn't care where it tilts. It will never go back to a natural resting position. This boat prefers to be upside down. So that's another case of an inherent instability. All right, it is inherently unstable. It wants to, in this case, tip upside down. So let's go back to the default example. All right, and so let's go ahead and look at it again. This is the one that weighs 1424. Now let's bring one up. We're making the center of rotation right here where the deck is. Let's actually add enough weight blocks so that it brings it right up to the to where the center of rotation is. All right, and let's see if we can get it right up on this white line right there. If we can do that, this is where you'll see a lot of people, they'll post it, again, all over, saying, hey, my boat is tilting to one side. Why is it tilting to one side? This is why it's tilting to one side, is your boat doesn't care if it's right side up. It doesn't care if it's upside down. It doesn't care if it's tilting 10 degrees to the left, 5 degrees to the left, 2 degrees to starboard. It doesn't care. So right there, see this line? That's where our pivot's going to go. Our center of gravity is right there at the center of rotation. Let's go ahead and we'll put in the pivot. And now if I move this boat like 1 degree to the left to port, it's going to stay there. If I move it 2 degrees to starboard, it's going to stay there because it doesn't care. It's right at the center of rotation. All right, so the next test we're going to do here is something that is neutrally stable. All right, so neutral stability means if you put a force on it or you tip it a certain way, it's going to stay there because it doesn't care because your center of gravity is at your center of rotation. So remember, center of gravity is below the center of rotation. Boat wants to stay upright. Center of gravity is above the center of rotation. It's going to want to stay upside down. If it's right at the center of rotation, which we're doing right here above the waterline at the deck level, the boat is going to not care. So if we tip it a little bit, it's going to stay tipped. It's not going to tip back one way or the other. So we're going to add a bunch of weight, and we're going to try to get this right where it is neutrally, where it's neutral. So where it's right here at the center of rotation. So if we look, our CG is right here at the center of rotation. Let's make a mark. Perfect. All right, so this one is going to be neutral. It's not going to care. When we tip it a little bit, it's not going to want to tip back very much, if at all. All right, we'll paste that. We'll merge it. All right, now this one here, again, it's right where it's pivoting. You see where the pivot is? It's on the same line, the same plane as where the mass is. This is when you get people complaining that their boat is tilting a little bit. So right now, I'm going to get out. So notice I tilted it a little bit to the left. See how it's staying tilted to the left? That's because it's neutrally stable. That's because the mass is at the pivot point. This is great for an airplane. If you have an airplane like this, you tip it, it stays tipped. You have to tip it back. So right now, as you notice, we're gently tipped to the left. I'm going to tip it a little bit more to the left, and I'm going to jump out. Notice, it stays tipped to the left. Let's tip it a little bit more. And we jump back out. Notice, it's tipped a little bit more. Let's tip it some more. And let's jump out. Notice the boat. It stays tipped. This is what's known as neutral stability. Let's tip it some more. Boat stays. This is neutrally stable. Whatever force we put on it, it's going to stay. So if you wanted an airplane where you put a little bit of tipping force on there and it stays, that's what's good for an airplane. Neutral stability is great. It's neutral static stability. It's going to tip and it's going to stay there. That's great for a plane, not good for a boat. You want the boat so that it will default to staying upright. All right. This is great for a plane. This is not good for a boat, right? So we know. So you'll see people posting on, Reddit and wherever on the Steam forum saying, "Hey, my boat is tipped a little bit. Why is it doing this?" It's because your center of gravity is very close to your center of rotation, and so it doesn't care to tip back. Now we can fix this really easily, right? We know how to fix this. We know how to fix this exact situation, right? All we have to do is add some weight to the bottom, right? Because that will bring down the center of gravity. And now watch what happens, right? Watch what happens. We added some weight to the bottom, and watch what happens. Right before, if I move to the left, it would stay there. Now I move to the left and I jump off. What's it do? Straightens out. So this is a real quick example of stability. And how you want to build your boat, in this case, to be stable. It also showed how you want to build your plane. Neutral stability is great for an airplane, very bad for a boat. And you can see with this block demonstration I just did here, by putting it in the bottom, we've completely solved for this problem by putting some mass down low. Right before, all I had to do was move over to the left and it would keep going, and it would stay in that position. You put some weight down low, it will fix that solution. So now that's pretty much some basics of boat stability. We're going to move on from here. In the next episode, we'll start talking about how we want to start ballasting our boat. And so what we want to do is we want to keep moving that weight down low. And then as we start adding things like engines and fuel and everything else, we can start to remove some of that weight. So hope you found this interesting. Hope you continue with the series. Next episode, we'll start going into some more. Thanks for watching.